The moment I completely fell apart was the moment everything started working. I'm Henry Ford, and what I'm about to tell you isn't about staying positive or pushing through or any of that. This is about what to do when life actually feels impossible. When you're not just tired or stressed, when everything is collapsing and you can't see a way forward. I've been there, more than once. And what I learned in those moments changed everything. Not just for me, for everyone who's ever built anything that mattered. Because here's what nobody tells you. The impossible moment isn't the end. It's the beginning. But only if you know what to do when you're in it. Most people don't. They panic, they freeze, they make it worse. I'm going to show you exactly what to do instead, the specific steps, the real actions, not theories, not hope, actual things you can do today that will turn the impossible moment into the breakthrough you needed. And if you're in that moment right now, if life feels impossible as you're listening to this, pay close attention, because what I'm about to teach you will work, not someday, starting right now. I'm going to show you the 3 stages every impossible moment has, how to move through each one, what to do with the feelings that try to stop you, and how to rebuild something better than what collapsed. Listen to this daily. Each time you hear it, you'll catch something new, something that applies to exactly where you are. So let's begin with the day everything fell apart for me. Let me tell you about the day everything fell apart for me. I'd left my job with Edison, started my own automobile company, put everything I had into it, money, time, reputation, everything. And it failed. Not just struggled, failed completely. The investors pulled out, the designs didn't work, the money ran out. I had nothing left. I remember sitting in an empty building that was supposed to be my factory, just sitting there in the dark. And I felt something I'd never felt before. Not just failure, complete impossibility. Like there was no path forward. Like I'd destroyed everything and there was no way to fix it. My wife was at home waiting for me. We had bills we couldn't pay. I had promises I couldn't keep. People who'd believed in me who now looked like fools for believing. And I had no idea what to do next. That moment felt like the end. Like I'd reached a wall I couldn't climb over or break through. I'd quit a good job with Edison for this. I'd put every dollar we had into this. I'd told everyone this was going to work. And now it was just gone. I sat in that empty building for hours. The sun went down, the darkness came, and I just sat there feeling the weight of complete failure. Not the kind where you try again tomorrow, the kind where there is no tomorrow, where you've used up all your chances and burned all your bridges and there's nowhere left to go. But that moment, that impossible moment where everything collapsed, that was actually the most important moment of my entire life. Not because it felt good, it didn't. It felt like death. But because it stripped everything away. All the fake priorities, all the things I thought mattered but didn't, all the comfortable lies I'd been telling myself, all the paths that looked right but were wrong. When everything collapsed, when I had nothing left to lose and nowhere left to hide, I finally saw clearly. And what I saw changed everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me show you what actually happens in the impossible moment. Because once you understand this, you'll never fear it the same way again. You might still hurt in it, but you won't fear it, because you'll know what it's actually doing. Now let me show you something that will change how you see your current situation. Every impossible moment has 3 stages, and most people quit in stage 1 because they don't know stage 2 and 3 are coming. They think stage 1 is the whole story. It's not. Stage 1 is the collapse. This is where you are when life feels impossible. Everything you built is falling apart. Everything you tried isn't working. You can't see any way forward. Everything feels heavy and dark and final. This stage feels like the end, and that's why most people quit here. They think the collapse is the destination. They think this is where the story ends, but it's not. The collapse is just stage 1. It's the beginning, not the ending. Stage 2 is the clarity. This is what comes after the collapse if you don't quit. When everything falls away, when all the noise stops, when the chaos settles, you suddenly see things you couldn't see before. You see what actually matters versus what you thought mattered. You see what was fake versus what's real. You see what was holding you back versus what moves you forward. You see what needs to change. The collapse clears your vision. It's like cleaning a dirty window. You couldn't see through it before. Now you can. Stage 3 is the climb. This is where you rebuild, but not the same way, better, because now you have the clarity from stage 2. You know what to build and what to leave behind. You know what matters and what doesn't. You know who you actually are versus who you were pretending to be. The climb is hard, but it's different from the collapse. The collapse tears down, the climb builds up, and what you build in stage 3 is always stronger than what fell apart in stage 1. Always. Because it's built on clarity instead of assumptions, on truth instead of comfortable lies, on what actually works instead of what you hoped would work. I didn't know this when I was sitting in that empty factory. I thought the collapse was the end. I thought I'd failed and that was the whole story. But it wasn't. It was just stage 1. And what happened next, the clarity that came from that collapse, that's what I need to show you. Because that's where the real breakthrough happens. That's where impossible becomes possible. Here's what I saw in that moment of collapse that I couldn't see before. I saw that I'd been building the wrong thing. Not poorly, wrong. I'd been trying to make an automobile that was fancy, expensive, impressive, for rich people who wanted to show off. Because that's what the investors wanted. That's what seemed like the smart business move. That's what looked like success. But sitting there in the dark, with nothing left, with all the noise gone, I realized something. I didn't care about impressing investors. I didn't care about making something fancy. I didn't care about rich people having toys. What I actually cared about, what I'd always cared about but had buried under other people's priorities, was making something useful. Something working people could afford. Something that would change how regular people lived. Something that would give a factory worker the same freedom of movement that only rich people had. That clarity only came because everything else had collapsed. If the company had succeeded with the original plan, if the investors had stayed, if the money had kept flowing, I would have spent my life building the wrong thing. I would have built fancy automobiles for people who already had everything. And I would have missed the whole point, the whole purpose, the thing that actually mattered. The collapse saved me from that. It forced me to see what I actually wanted to build, not what looked impressive, not what made investors happy, what actually mattered to me. That's stage 2. That's the clarity. And it only comes after the collapse. You can't see it while you're succeeding at the wrong thing. You only see it when the wrong thing falls apart and you're forced to look at what's actually there. Now let me show you what to do in each stage, because knowing the stages exist doesn't help if you don't know how to move through them. And most people get stuck in stage 1 because they don't know what to do there. When you're in stage 1, when everything is falling apart and life feels impossible, here's exactly what you do. And I'm going to be very specific because vague advice doesn't help when you're drowning. First, stop trying to save everything. This is what most people get wrong. They're in the middle of a collapse and they're running around trying to hold everything together, trying to save every piece, trying to keep everything from falling, trying to patch every hole. Stop. Let it fall. I know that sounds wrong. I know it sounds like giving up, but listen. The collapse is happening whether you try to stop it or not. You can't hold up a building that's already falling. All you do by trying is exhaust yourself. You waste energy you're going to need for stage 3. And more importantly, by trying to save everything, you're preventing stage 2 from happening. Because stage 2, the clarity, only comes when you stop trying to save what's dying and start looking at what's actually happening. When you stop running and start seeing. When I was in that empty factory, my first instinct was to panic, to run around trying to find new investors, to call in favors, to salvage the old designs, to beg people to give the company another chance, to keep the dead thing alive. But I didn't have the energy for that anymore. I'd already tried all of it. I'd already exhausted every option. So I just sat there. And that's when the clarity started coming. Not because I was smart, because I was too tired to keep fighting. Second, write down what's actually collapsing, not what you're afraid might collapse. not everything you're worried about. What is actually falling apart right now, today? Be specific. Use real words. For me, it was this. The Detroit Automobile Company failed. The investors left. The money is gone. I have no job. We can't pay this month's rent. That's what was actually happening. Writing it down makes it real. And making it real is how you stop the panic. Because panic comes from vague fear, from imagining everything collapsing all at once, from your mind spinning through every possible disaster. When you write down what's actually happening, it's usually smaller than the fear made it seem. Still bad, still real, but smaller than the panic. And smaller means you can see it, you can work with it. Third, ask yourself one question about each thing that's collapsing. What is this showing me? Not, why did this happen? Not, whose fault is this? What is this showing me? Every collapse reveals something you needed to see. A weakness you didn't know was there. A lie you were believing. A path that was wrong. A person who wasn't really with you. A plan that wouldn't have worked. The collapse is information. Painful information, but information you needed. And you need to see what it's showing you. Let me give you a real example of this. There was a man who worked at one of my competitors' factories. His name was William, came from the same town I grew up in. He'd been at that factory for 15 years. Good worker, showed up every day, did everything they asked. Loyal, reliable, never complained. Then one day the factory closed. No warning, no gradual shutdown, just closed. Locked the doors, sent everyone home. 15 years of loyalty meant nothing. William came to see me because he heard I was hiring, and he was angry. Not just upset, burning angry. Felt betrayed. Felt like 15 years of his life had been stolen. Like all that loyalty and hard work had been thrown away like garbage. He wanted me to tell him he was right to be angry. He wanted me to agree that what happened to him was unfair. And it was unfair. But I didn't tell him that. I asked him a different question. What is this collapse showing you? He didn't understand the question at first. He said it wasn't showing him anything. It was just bad luck. Just a factory closing. Just unfair treatment. So I explained. That factory closing isn't just bad luck, William. It's information. What is it showing you about spending 15 years building someone else's business instead of your own? About trusting that loyalty would be rewarded? About believing a job was security? What is this collapse revealing that you needed to see? He got quiet. Sat there for a long time without saying anything. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, it's showing me I wasted 15 years on security that wasn't real. He thought working for someone else was safe. He thought loyalty meant job security. He thought doing good work meant he'd be taken care of. The collapse showed him all of that was a lie. Not a small lie. The foundation he'd built his whole life on. That information destroyed him for about a week. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, kept going over those 15 years in his mind. But then something shifted. He stopped being angry about what he lost. He started being grateful for what the collapse revealed before he wasted another 15 years. That shift changed his life. He didn't look for another factory job. He started his own small manufacturing business. Just him at first. Then he hired one person, then another. Today he employs 12 people, makes parts for automobiles, owns his own building, and he tells everyone that the factory closing was the best thing that ever happened to him. Not because it felt good, because it showed him the truth before he wasted his whole life on a lie. That's what the collapse does. It shows you what you need to see, but only if you're willing to look at it instead of just trying to make it stop. Most people spend all their energy trying to make the pain stop. They never ask what the pain is revealing, and they miss the whole point of the collapse. Now here's what happens after you stop trying to save everything, after you write down what's actually collapsing, after you see what it's showing you. The impossible feeling starts to shift. Not because the situation got better. The situation might still be terrible. But the feeling shifts because you moved from stage 1 to stage 2, from collapse to clarity. And clarity, even painful clarity, feels different from chaos. Clarity feels like you can breathe again, like you can see the path even if the path is hard. Let me show you the exact questions that bring this clarity. These aren't casual questions. These are surgical questions. They cut through everything else and get to what's real. Question 1. What was I actually building before the collapse? Not what I told people I was building. Not what I hoped I was building. What was I actually building with my time, my energy, my choices? Be brutally honest. For me, before the collapse, I was building investor approval. I was building something that would make me look successful to other people. I was building a version of success that wasn't even mine. It was what other people said success should look like, and I was chasing it without even realizing that's what I was doing. Seeing that clearly hurt, but it also freed me. Question 2. What did the collapse actually take away? List everything that's gone. Your job, your business, your relationship, your savings, your reputation, your plan, your certainty about the future. Whatever it is, write it all down. Don't minimize it. Don't pretend it's not that bad. Write the full truth of what's gone. For me, the collapse took away the automobile company, the investor money, my reputation as someone who knew what he was doing, my certainty about how to build a successful business, my job security, and my pride. That was a long list, a painful list, but seeing it all written down was important because that leads to question 3. Question 3, and this is the most important one. What's still here? What didn't collapse? What remained after everything fell? Because that's what actually matters. That's what's real. Everything that collapsed was built on sand. Everything that's still here is built on rock. And you need to see what that is. For me, what was still there after the collapse was this. I still knew how to design engines. I still understood manufacturing. I still had my hands and my mind. I still had my wife who believed in me even after I failed. I still had the vision of putting America on wheels. I still cared about making something useful for working people. The company collapsed. The investors left. The money disappeared. My reputation took a hit. But those 6 things stayed, and those were the only things that mattered. The collapse showed me that by taking everything else away, those 6 things were my foundation. Everything else had been decoration, nice to have but not necessary. The collapse stripped away the decoration and showed me the foundation, and the foundation was solid. This is what stage 2 gives you. It shows you what's real and what's fake, what matters and what doesn't, what you actually care about versus what you were doing because you thought you should, what you can build on versus what was never solid to begin with. But you only get this clarity if you're willing to look. Most people are so busy grieving what collapsed that they never see what remained. They focus all their attention on what they lost. They replay it, analyze it, wish it hadn't happened, and they completely miss what's still there. They miss the foundation that the collapse revealed. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. I had a conversation with Andrew Carnegie once about this exact thing. Carnegie had lost his first business too, steel manufacturing company that went under, lost everything. And I asked him what he learned from that collapse. He said something I wrote down and kept. He said, "The collapse showed me I'd been building on borrowed vision. I was building what my partners wanted, what investors wanted, what the market seemed to want, but I didn't know what I wanted. The collapse took away everyone else's vision, and I finally had to find my own. That's what happened to me too. Before the collapse, I was building on borrowed vision. After the collapse, I had to find my own. And my own vision was completely different. It was simpler, more focused, more honest. Before the collapse, I wanted to build automobiles that impressed people. After the collapse, I wanted to build automobiles that helped people. That shift in vision changed everything. But I never would have made that shift without the collapse. The collapse forced me to ask what I actually wanted, not what would make money, not what would impress investors, what I actually wanted to build. And here's what I discovered. What I actually wanted was more achievable than what I was trying to build before. The fancy automobile for rich people was harder, more expensive, more complicated. required more money, more resources, more everything. The simple automobile for working people was clearer, more focused, more possible. The collapse didn't just show me what mattered, it showed me a better path, a path I couldn't see while I was busy chasing the wrong thing. Now let me show you how to access this clarity yourself, because it's available to everyone in the collapse. But most people are so focused on the pain that they miss it. Let me show you something that will change how you see loss forever. What remains after everything collapses is always more valuable than what collapsed. Always. Every single time, without exception. Because what collapses is what was weak, what was fake, what was built on the wrong foundation, what was never going to last anyway. What remains is what's strong, what's real, what actually matters, what can hold weight. After my first company failed, after I sat in that empty factory and faced the complete collapse, I made a list of what was still there, what hadn't fallen, what remained. I still had my hands. I could still build things with them. I still had my mind. I could still design. I could still think through problems. I could still learn. I still had my wife. She believed in me even when I'd failed, even when we had no money, even when I looked like a fool. I still had my vision. I knew automobiles could change the world. I knew working people deserved better transportation. That vision hadn't collapsed. I still had my skills. I knew engines. I knew manufacturing. I knew how things worked. I still had my reputation with certain people, not investors, but people like Edison who knew I could design. People like Firestone who knew I could build. That list was short. 6 things. Just 6. But everything on that list was real, solid, true. And that short list of real things was worth more than all the fake success I'd lost, all the investor money, all the impressive plans, all the big talk. Because I could build something lasting on those 6 real things. I couldn't build anything lasting on investor approval or fancy presentations or impressive sounding business plans. Those were sand. Those 6 things were rock. And here's what I learned. You don't need much to rebuild. You need the right things. Not many things. The right things. Those 6 items on my list were enough. More than enough. Because they were real. Most people look at what remains after a collapse and think it's not enough. They think they lost too much. They think they need everything they had before to move forward. But that's backwards. Everything they had before included the weak things, the fake things, the things that collapsed. What remains is just the strong things, the real things, and those are always enough if you know how to build on them. Now let me tell you about another man who learned this the hard way. His name was James, business partner of mine in the early days. Smart man, very smart, good with numbers, could see patterns in markets that other people missed. But he built his whole life on one thing, status. He wanted to be seen as successful more than he wanted to actually be successful. So he bought a big house he couldn't afford, wore expensive clothes, threw parties to impress people, joined clubs, made sure everyone saw him with the right people in the right places. And for a while it worked. People saw him as successful. They'd point to him and say, "There's a man who made it." But the foundation was all wrong. He was spending more than he made to look like he made more than he spent. He was performing success instead of building it. Then he had some business setbacks. Nothing terrible, just some deals that didn't close, some investments that didn't pay off, normal business fluctuations. But he'd been living so far beyond his means that even small setbacks became a crisis. He couldn't keep up the image anymore, lost the house, had to sell the expensive things, move to a smaller place, stop the parties, stop the performance. And he came to me completely broken, said his life was over, said everyone would see him as a failure now, said he had nothing left. I asked him the same questions I'm asking you. What remained? He said nothing remained. Everything was gone. The house, the status, the image, the respect, all of it gone. So I pushed him harder. You're still here, aren't you? You didn't die. What's still here? He got angry, started listing all the things that were gone. I stopped him. I said, I didn't ask what's gone. I asked what's still here. What remained? He sat there for a long time. Finally, he started listing things, small things, reluctant. I still have my skills. I still know business. I still understand markets. I still have some real friends, not the ones who came to the parties, the ones who stuck around after. I still have my mind. I still have my hands. I still have my life ahead of me. That list was short, maybe 10 things, but I made him look at it, really look at it, and I asked him, what on that list is more valuable than the big house? What on that list matters more than expensive clothes? What on that list will actually build something lasting? He didn't want to answer at first, but eventually he admitted it. Everything on that list was more valuable than anything he lost, because what he lost was image. What remained was substance. And you can't build anything real on image, but you can build everything on substance. James rebuilt after that, but this time he built on what was real instead of what looked impressive. He kept his expenses low, lived simply, focused on actually building profitable businesses instead of looking like he had profitable businesses. He built relationships with people who cared about substance instead of people impressed by flash. Today, he's actually successful. Not performing success, actually successful. Profitable businesses, real relationships, financial security, peace of mind. And he tells everyone that the collapse was the best thing that ever happened to him. Not because it felt good, it didn't. It felt like death. But because it showed him what mattered. It stripped away what was fake and left only what was real. And what was real was enough to build a life on. So here's the practice for stage 2. This is how you access the clarity that the collapse is trying to give you. Make 2 lists. Get paper. Use real paper and a real pen. Not a phone, not a computer. Paper and pen. Something physical. List 1. What collapsed? Be specific. What actually fell apart? Write every piece. Your job ended. Your business failed. Your relationship ended. Your savings are gone. Your plan didn't work. Your reputation took a hit. Whatever it is, write all of it. Don't minimize it. Don't soften it. Write the full truth of what collapsed. This list will hurt to write. Write it anyway. Because you need to see it clearly. Not as a vague cloud of badness, as specific things that are gone. List 2. What remained? What's still here? What didn't fall? What do you still have? And I don't mean material things. I mean real things. Do you still have your mind? Write that down. Do you still have your hands? Write that down. Do you still have skills, knowledge, experience, relationships with people who actually care, vision for what you want to build, capacity to learn, capacity to work, health, time, life ahead of you? Write every single thing that remained, even if it seems small, especially if it seems small. Now here's what you do with those 2 lists. You look at list 2 longer than list 1, much longer. Because list 2 is your foundation. That's what you build the next thing on. Everything on list 1 needed to collapse. It was in your way. It was holding you back. It was keeping you from building what actually matters. List 2 is what matters. And I promise you, if you're honest about what remained, you'll see you have everything you actually need. Not everything you thought you wanted. Not everything that looked impressive, but everything you actually need to build what matters. You have your mind. That's enough to think. You have your hands. That's enough to work. You have time ahead of you. That's enough to build. You have the lesson from the collapse. That's enough to build better. Everything else is extra. Nice to have, but not necessary. What remained is sufficient. Let me tell you what happened when I did this practice myself. When I made those 2 lists after my first company failed. List 1 was long, painful. The company failed. The investors left. The money was gone. My job with Edison was gone because I'd left it. Our savings were spent. My reputation as someone who knew what he was doing was damaged. My certainty about how to build a business was shaken. People who'd believed in me looked foolish. I'd let people down. That was a heavy list. I sat with that list for a while, felt the weight of it, let myself feel how bad it was. Then I made list 2, what remained. And this list changed everything. I still had the ability to design engines. I still understood how automobiles worked. I still had my hands and could build things. I still had my wife Clara who believed in me. I still had friends like Edison who knew I had skill even if this venture failed. I still had the vision of putting America on wheels. I still cared about making things better for working people. I still had time ahead of me. I still had the capacity to learn from this failure. I still had my health. I still had determination. I still had nothing left to lose, which meant I could take bigger risks. That last one surprised me when I wrote it. I still had nothing left to lose. That seemed like a bad thing, but it was actually freedom. When you have nothing left to lose, you can build exactly what you want. No investors to please, no image to maintain, no safety to protect. Just pure building. List 2 was shorter than List 1, but everything on List 2 was more valuable than everything on List 1. The company that failed was built on sand. The things that remained were built on rock. And you can't build a cathedral on sand, but you can build anything on rock. That's when I understood what the collapse had actually done. It hadn't destroyed my foundation. It had revealed my foundation by destroying everything that wasn't foundation. All the scaffolding was gone. All the temporary supports, all the decoration. What remained was the structure that could hold weight, and that structure was more than enough to build something better. Now let me show you stage 3, because this is where you take the clarity from stage 2 and turn it into action. This is the climb, this is the rebuild, and it's completely different from anything you built before, because now you're building on clarity instead of assumptions, on truth instead of comfortable lies, on what actually works instead of what you hoped would work. Stage 3 is where you rebuild, but here's what makes this different from what you built before the collapse. You're not rebuilding the same thing. You're building something better, something that couldn't have existed without the collapse, something that required the clarity to see. Before the collapse, I was building what I thought would work, what investors wanted, what seemed smart, what looked impressive. After the collapse, I built what I actually believed in, automobiles for working people, simple, affordable, useful, honest. The Model T came from the clarity of the collapse, not from the success that came before it. And the Model T changed everything, not just for me, for the whole world, for how people lived, for how goods moved, for how America grew. But it only existed because I was willing to build something different after the collapse. If I tried to rebuild the same fancy automobile company, I would have failed again. Same foundation, same result. The collapse taught me what foundation doesn't work. Stage 3 is about building on the foundation that does work. Here's what most people do wrong in Stage 3. They get the clarity from Stage 2. They see what actually matters. They understand what the collapse revealed. Then they go right back to building the same thing they built before. Maybe with small adjustments, maybe a little different, but fundamentally the same. They waste the collapse. They ignore the clarity. They learn nothing from the pain. And they end up in another collapse a few years later, wondering why the same patterns keep repeating. Don't do that. Don't waste the clarity. Stage 3 is about building something new, something based on what you learned, something that couldn't have existed without the collapse, something that honors the pain by actually changing. Let me show you exactly how to do this. How to build in Stage 3 in a way that actually works. Step 1. Take what remained from List 2. That's your foundation. That's what you build on, not what you wish you had, not what you lost, what actually remained. For me, it was engine design skills, manufacturing knowledge, vision for automobiles, my wife's belief, real friendships, and nothing left to lose. That was my foundation, small but solid. Step 2. Use the clarity to define what you're actually building. Not what looks good to other people, not what investors want, not what seems impressive. What you actually believe matters, what you actually care about, what you're actually willing to suffer for. Because Stage 3 requires suffering. Building always does. So you better be building something worth suffering for. For me, it was affordable automobiles for working people. That was clear. That was honest. That was worth suffering for. Step 3. Build small. Don't try to rebuild everything at once. Don't try to get back to where you were before. Start smaller than that, much smaller. Take one piece of what you're building and build just that piece. Build it right. Prove it works. Then build the next piece. I didn't start by building a whole new automobile company. I started by building one engine that worked the way I wanted it to work. Just one. I built it in a shed, with my own hands, tested it, made it work. Then I built a car around that engine. Just one car. Made sure it worked. Then I built another, then 10. Small builds that proved the concept. Each one teaching me something. Each one showing me what worked and what didn't. Small builds compound. They teach you things big builds miss. They let you fail small instead of failing big. They build confidence that you can actually do this. Step 4. This is the one most people skip. Protect the clarity. Because the world is going to try to pull you back to what you were building before. It's going to happen. Investors will show up with money if you build what they want. People will tell you to play it safe, to do what worked for other people. Your own fear will whisper that maybe the old way was better, that maybe you should just do what you were doing before, that maybe the clarity from the collapse was wrong. Don't listen. The clarity from stage 2 is more valuable than all of that, more valuable than investor money, more valuable than other people's approval, more valuable than your own fear. Protect it. Write it down. Look at it every day. Remind yourself what the collapse showed you, what mattered, what didn't, what was real, what was fake. Don't let the world talk you out of what you learned in the fire. Step 5. Act despite the feelings. Because stage 3 brings feelings too. Different feelings from stage 1, but just as strong. In stage 1, you felt hopeless. In stage 3, you'll feel uncertain. You'll feel afraid. You'll feel like quitting. You'll feel like it's taking too long. You'll feel like it's not working. Those feelings are normal. They come with building. The question is not how to make the feelings go away. The question is what to do while the feelings are there. And the answer is act anyway. Build anyway. Keep going anyway. Feelings are information, not instructions. They tell you this is hard. They don't tell you to stop. Listen to this every day. Let these principles sink deeper with each listen. Your mind needs repetition to change old patterns. Let me tell you a story about stage 3 that shows how all of this works in real life. When I was building the Model T, after I'd learned the lessons from the collapse, I ran into another impossible moment. A different kind. Not a collapse of what I'd built, but hitting a wall in how to build it. We were making Model T automobiles. They were selling. People wanted them, but we couldn't make them fast enough. The process was too slow. Each car took too long to build. We needed to speed it up, dramatically. I tried everything I could think of during the day. More workers, better tools, different processes. Nothing made enough difference. We'd speed up one part and another part would slow down. We'd fix one bottleneck and create another. It felt impossible, like we'd hit the limit of what could be done. One night I fell asleep thinking about it, not forcing a solution, just holding the problem in my mind as I drifted off, asking my sleeping mind to work on it, trusting that the answer would come. At 2 in the morning, I woke up with a complete picture in my head. Not more workers, moving cars. Instead of workers going to the car moves past the workers. Each worker does one specific task as it passes. The car flows like a river past stations. Each station adds one piece. The whole process flows. I got up immediately, lit every lamp in the house, drew the entire design, every station, every movement, every task. By morning, I had the complete system mapped out, the assembly line. That design changed manufacturing forever, not just for automobiles, for everything. But here's what I want you to understand. That breakthrough only happened because I'd learned to trust the impossible moment. Before the collapse of my first company, if something seemed impossible, I would have given up. I would have decided it couldn't be done. The collapse taught me that impossible moments come before breakthroughs. that the wall isn't the end. It's the signal that you're about to break through. So when the manufacturing process felt impossible, I didn't quit. I held the problem. I trusted the process. I waited for the clarity, and it came. That's what stage 3 teaches you. How to work with impossible moments instead of against them. How to see the wall as information instead of limitation. How to trust that the breakthrough is coming if you keep going. But I want to be honest with you about something. Stage 3 is hard. Harder than stage 1 in some ways. Stage 1 hurts, but it's fast. The collapse happens quickly. Stage 3 is slow. It's months of building, years sometimes. It's showing up every day when you don't see progress. It's working when you're not sure it's working. It's continuing when every feeling tells you to stop. That's the real test, not whether you can survive the collapse. Most people survive that. The test is whether you can keep building during the slow middle, whether you can trust the clarity when results are delayed, whether you can act despite feelings of doubt and uncertainty and fear. That's where most people quit, not in the collapse, in the rebuild, when it's hard and slow and uncertain. But that's also where the breakthrough lives, on the other side of the slow, hard building. Let me tell you what kept me going during those slow, hard years. 2 things. First, I remembered what the collapse taught me. I'd write it down and read it when I felt like quitting. The collapse showed me I was building the wrong thing before. It showed me what actually matters. It showed me I can survive failure. It showed me I have everything I need. Those truths kept me going when feelings tried to stop me. Second, I focused on the next single step. Not the whole mountain, just the next step. Because the whole thing still felt impossible sometimes. But the next step never did. I can draw one more design. I can build one more part. I can test one more idea. I can work one more day. The next step was always possible. And the next step. And the next. And those possible steps added up to something that seemed impossible when I started. That's how you make it through stage 3. You protect the clarity from stage 2. You take the next possible step. You act despite feelings. You trust the process. You keep building. And eventually, you look back and realize you climbed the mountain. Not all at once, one step at a time, but you climbed it. And what you built in stage 3, built on the clarity from stage 2, built on the foundation that remained after stage 1. That's stronger than anything you built before the collapse, because it's built on truth, not assumptions, not hopes, not other people's vision. Truth. And truth holds weight. Truth lasts. Truth builds things that matter. Now let me talk about something that will try to stop you in every stage, but especially in stage 3. Feelings. Because the impossible moment brings feelings that seem true but aren't. And you need to know how to handle them or they'll stop you from completing the climb. Let me be clear about something that most people get wrong. Your feelings during the impossible moment are not accurate information about your situation. They're not. They feel true. They feel certain. They feel like reality. But they're not. They're fear speaking louder than reason. They're your mind trying to protect you by making you stop. They're old programming running automatically. When life feels impossible, when you're in stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3, you're going to feel things, strong things. You're going to feel hopeless, like there's no path forward, like you'll never recover, like this is the end. You're going to feel like quitting, like giving up, like stopping, like it's not worth it. You're going to feel uncertain, like you don't know what you're doing, like you're making it up, like you're going to fail. You're going to feel afraid of more loss, of more pain, of proving you can't do this. Those feelings are going to be strong, loud, insistent. They're going to feel like truth, but they're not truth. They're just feelings. And here's what I learned about feelings that changed everything. Feelings are information. They tell you something is happening, but they're not instructions. They don't tell you what to do. When you feel hopeless, that feeling is giving you information. It's saying, this is hard. You're scared. The outcome is uncertain. You don't see the path yet. That's all true information. The situation is hard. You are scared. The outcome is uncertain. You don't see the whole path. But that feeling is not an instruction to quit. It's not saying quitting is the right move. It's just information that you're doing something difficult. When you feel like giving up, that feeling is information. It's saying you're tired. This is taking longer than you wanted. You've hit obstacles you didn't expect. You don't know if it will work. True information, but not an instruction to stop. Just information that you're in the hard part. Every person who built something that mattered felt like quitting. Every single one. Edison felt like quitting. Carnegie felt like quitting. Rockefeller felt like quitting. I felt like quitting. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't that successful people feel better. It's that they understand feelings are information, not instructions. So they feel hopeless and keep building anyway. They feel like quitting and show up anyway. They feel uncertain and take the next step anyway. They feel afraid and act anyway. That's the real difference. Not better feelings. Better understanding of what feelings actually are. Let me tell you about a specific moment when this understanding saved me. I was building the Model T. The first prototypes were done. We were testing them. And they had problems. Not small problems, big ones. The engine would overheat after an hour of running. The transmission would slip. Parts would break under normal use. Nothing worked the way it was supposed to. I remember standing in the factory looking at a line of broken automobiles. 5 of them, all broken in different ways. And I felt complete despair. Like I'd failed again. Like the whole thing was impossible. Like I should just stop. Those feelings were screaming at me. Loud, certain. Telling me to quit. Telling me it wasn't working. Telling me I'd been wrong about everything. And they felt so real. So true. So much like reality that I almost listened. But I'd learned by then that feelings are information, not instructions. So I stopped and asked myself, what is this feeling telling me? What's the actual information here? The information was this. The first version has problems. I don't know yet how to fix them. This is harder than I thought. I'm tired. I'm afraid of failing again. Okay, all of that is true information. Now what's the instruction? Is the instruction quit, or is the instruction fix the problems? When I separated the feeling from the instruction, the answer was obvious. The instruction wasn't quit. The instruction was fix the problems. One at a time. Figure out why the engine overheats. Fix that. Figure out why the transmission slips. Fix that. Figure out why parts break. Fix that. The feeling said quit. The instruction said fix. I followed the instruction instead of the feeling, and I fixed the problems. One at a time. Slowly. With a lot of testing and failing and trying again. But I fixed them. And eventually the Model T worked. Not because the feelings went away. They didn't. I felt like quitting dozens more times while fixing those problems. But because I understood that feelings are information, not instructions. I could feel hopeless and fix problems anyway. I could feel like quitting and show up anyway. I could feel uncertain and test solutions anyway. The feelings didn't control my actions. The instructions did. And that made all the difference. So here's the practice for working with feelings during the impossible moment. This is how you stop feelings from controlling you. When a strong feeling comes, and it will, stop and ask 3 questions. Question 1. What is this feeling telling me? What's the actual information? Not what should I do? What information is this feeling giving me? If you feel hopeless, the information is probably this is hard. I'm scared. I don't see the path yet. If you feel like quitting, the information is probably I'm tired. This is taking longer than I wanted. I don't know if it will work. Write down the actual information the feeling is giving you. Be specific. Be honest. Don't argue with the feeling. Just identify what information it's providing. Question 2. Is this information true? Look at what you wrote. Is it actually true? Usually it is. The situation is hard. You are scared. You are tired. It is taking longer than you wanted. That's all true. The feeling isn't lying about the information. It's just trying to turn information into instructions. Question 3. What's the actual instruction? Based on the true information, what should you do? If the information is, this is hard and I'm scared and I don't see the path yet, is the instruction quit? Or is the instruction, keep going and find the path? If the information is, I'm tired and this is taking longer than I wanted, is the instruction stop? Or is the instruction rest and then continue? Almost always, when you separate the information from the instruction, the real instruction is not what the feeling suggests. The feeling suggests quit, stop, give up. The real instruction is usually keep going, take the next step, solve the next problem. Do this practice every time a strong feeling tries to stop you. Every time. Don't skip it. Don't assume you know what the instruction is. Actually stop and ask the 3 questions. Write down the answers. Because feelings are convincing. They feel like truth. They feel like wisdom. They feel like your instincts protecting you. But they're just your fear trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. The instruction almost always requires you to get bigger, to keep going, to push through. And that's scary for your fear. So your fear creates feelings that suggest quitting. But quitting isn't the instruction. Growing is. Now let me show you something else about feelings that will help you. Feelings change. They're not permanent. They're not fixed. They come and go like weather. You can feel hopeless in the morning and determined by afternoon. You can feel like quitting at night and ready to fight in the morning. Feelings are temporary, but decisions are permanent. If you make a decision based on a temporary feeling, you create a permanent result from a temporary state. That's a terrible trade. I learned to wait before making decisions when I was in a strong negative feeling. If I felt like quitting, I wouldn't decide to quit that day. I'd wait. I'd see if the feeling was still there tomorrow. Usually it wasn't. Or it was quieter. Or I could see it more clearly for what it was. Information, not instruction. Sometimes the feeling would come back. But by waiting, by not making permanent decisions during temporary feelings, I avoided quitting things I should have continued. I avoided stopping things that just needed time. I avoided giving up right before the breakthrough. Here's the practice. When you feel like making a big decision, especially a decision to stop or quit or give up, wait 3 days. Don't decide for 3 days. Just wait. Keep going. Keep building. See if the feeling is still there in 3 days. See if it's still as strong. See if the instruction is still the same. Usually after 3 days, the feeling has changed. Not disappeared, but changed enough that you can see it's not permanent truth. It's temporary information, and temporary information shouldn't drive permanent decisions. This practice saved me countless times, saved projects I would have abandoned, saved relationships I would have ended, saved dreams I would have given up on, all because I waited 3 days before letting feelings make decisions. Now let me show you the most powerful truth I learned about impossible moments. One truth that changes everything. The feeling of impossibility comes from looking at the whole thing at once. The cure for that feeling is taking the next single step. When I was sitting in that empty factory after the collapse, life felt impossible because I was looking at everything I had to do at once. Build a new company, create new designs, find funding, hire people, build a factory, make automobiles, sell them, change an industry, all at once in my mind. A mountain so big I couldn't see the top. That felt impossible. Because it was impossible. All at once. You can't do everything at once. Nobody can. But one step isn't impossible. I could take out a piece of paper. That wasn't impossible. I could draw one part of an engine. That wasn't impossible. I could walk home and tell my wife the truth. That wasn't impossible. The impossible feeling came from looking at the mountain. The cure came from taking the next step up the mountain. Here's what nobody tells you about big achievements. Nobody ever did them all at once. Nobody ever will. You can't. Edison didn't invent the light bulb all at once. He took thousands of single steps, each one small, each one possible, but they added up to something impossible. Carnegie didn't build his steel empire all at once. He made one decision, then the next, then the next. Small possible decisions that compounded into something impossible. Rockefeller didn't create Standard Oil all at once. One deal, one decision, one action, then another, then another. I didn't create the automobile industry all at once. I drew one design, built one part, made one car, sold one car, then another, then another. Single steps that added up over time to something that seemed impossible when I started. But the steps themselves were never impossible. Each individual step was possible. And that's the key. That's how you defeat the impossible feeling. So here's what you do when life feels impossible. You stop looking at the whole thing. Stop trying to see the entire path. Stop trying to figure out all the steps. Stop looking at the mountain. And you ask yourself just one question. What's the next single step? Not the next 10 steps, not the whole journey, not the complete plan. Just the very next action you can take right now. For me in that empty factory, the next step was stand up and walk out of the building. That's all. Not rebuild a company, not design a new automobile, not figure out my whole future. Just stand up and walk out. I did that step. I stood up, I walked out. Then there was another next step. The next step was walk home. Just that. Put one foot in front of the other until I got home. I did that step. Then another next step appeared. Tell my wife what happened. Be honest. Don't hide. Just tell the truth. I did that. Then another step. Get some sleep. Then another. In the morning, take out paper and draw what I actually want to build. None of those steps were impossible. But if I'd looked at all of them at once, if I'd tried to see the whole path from that empty factory to building the Model T, it would have felt impossible. The path was too long, too unclear, too uncertain. But the next step was never unclear. The next step was always obvious. Stand up, walk out, go home, tell the truth, sleep, draw. Each step led to the next, and eventually those possible steps added up to something impossible. This is how you defeat the impossible feeling. Not by conquering the whole mountain today, by taking the next step today, then the next step tomorrow, then the next. The mountain gets climbed one step at a time. Every mountain in history was climbed this way. One step at a time. There's no other way. You can't jump to the top. You can't skip the middle. You climb one step at a time. And each individual step is possible even when the whole mountain seems impossible. Now let me tell you about something I learned that completely changed how I see failure and loss and collapse. Something that most people never figure out. And it has to do with gratitude. But not the kind of gratitude most people talk about. Everyone says, be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for your blessings. Be grateful for what's going well. And that's fine. But it doesn't change you. What changed me was learning to be grateful for what broke, for what I lost, for what collapsed. Let me explain. After my first automobile company failed, I spent time being angry. Angry at the investors who left. Angry at myself for failing. Angry at the unfairness of it all. Angry at how hard I'd worked for nothing. That anger was real. But it didn't help. It just kept me stuck in the pain. Then one day I tried something different. I made a list. But not a list of things I was grateful I still had. A list of things I was grateful were gone. Things I was grateful the collapse took away. Things I was grateful broke. I was grateful the investors left, because they were pushing me to build something I didn't believe in, something fancy for rich people, something that would have been successful but meaningless. I was grateful the money ran out, because it was funding the wrong vision. Every dollar spent on that company was a dollar wasted on the wrong thing. I was grateful the company collapsed, because it freed me to build what actually mattered. If it had succeeded, I'd be stuck building the wrong thing for the rest of my life. I was grateful I failed publicly, because it showed me who my real friends were. The people who stayed weren't impressed by success. They cared about me. I was grateful I lost my certainty, because my certainty was about the wrong path. Losing it opened me to finding the right path. That list changed everything. I stopped seeing the collapse as something that happened to me. I started seeing it as something that happened for me. It cleared the path. It removed obstacles I didn't even know were there. It forced me to see truth I'd been avoiding. It pushed me toward what actually mattered. Every breakdown is like that. Every collapse, every loss. It's removing something that was in your way, something that needed to go, something that was preventing you from building what actually matters. But most people never see it. They're so focused on what they lost that they never see what that loss made possible. Let me give you another example of this. There was a man named Thomas who worked in my factory. Good man, hard worker. He'd been planning to start his own business for years. Had the idea, had some savings, had the knowledge. But he never started. Always found reasons to wait. The time wasn't right. He needed more money. He needed more certainty. He needed to learn more. Years went by. He was still planning, still preparing, still waiting. Then he got sick. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that he couldn't work for 3 months, couldn't do anything but rest. Lost his income for those months, had to spend his savings on medical bills. Everything he'd been saving to start his business, gone. When he came back to work, he was angry. Years of savings gone. His business plan delayed even further. More years of waiting ahead. He came to me bitter about the whole thing. Said life was unfair. Said he'd never get ahead. I asked him a question that made him think. What are you grateful the sickness revealed? He looked at me like I was crazy. He wasn't grateful for anything about being sick. So I pushed. Did it reveal that you've been planning for years without acting? Did it reveal that waiting for perfect conditions means waiting forever? Did it reveal that your savings were just an excuse because if you really wanted to start, you'd start without them? Did it reveal that you're more afraid of trying than you are of dying without trying? He got angry at first, said I didn't understand, but the questions stayed with him. A few days later he came back, said he'd been thinking about what the sickness revealed, and he realized I was right. He'd been using savings as an excuse. If he really wanted to start his business, he didn't need perfect conditions. He just needed to start. 6 months later, he quit my factory and started his own small business. Started small, with no savings, just started. Today he's successful, has his own factory now, employs 20 people, and he says getting sick was the best thing that ever happened to him. Not because being sick was good, because it revealed he was wasting his life waiting for perfect conditions that would never come. It took his excuse away, and without the excuse, he had to either act or admit he was afraid to act. He chose to act. The sickness, the loss of savings, the collapse of his perfect plan, that's what pushed him to finally start. That's what I mean by being grateful for what broke. Not pretending it doesn't hurt, but recognizing it showed you something you needed to see. It removed something that was in your way. It pushed you toward what you actually needed to do. Here's the practice I want you to do. I call it reverse gratitude, and it will change how you see every loss in your life. Make a list of everything that collapsed, broke, or ended in your life recently. Be specific. Job ended, relationship ended, business failed, money was lost, plan didn't work, dream died. Whatever it is, write it all down. Now, for each thing on that list, complete this sentence. I'm grateful this revealed. What did that loss reveal? What did it show you that you needed to see? What weakness? What lie? What wrong path? What fake friend? What wrong priority? Write it for each loss. Then complete another sentence for each loss. I'm grateful this removed. What did that loss remove from your life? What obstacle? What distraction? What drain? What weight? What was that loss clearing away? Write it for each loss. Then one more sentence for each loss. I'm grateful this made space for. What did that loss make room for? What became possible because that thing ended? What couldn't happen while that thing was there? What can happen now that it's gone? This practice is hard. Your mind will resist it. You'll want to say there's nothing to be grateful for. Do it anyway. Force yourself to find the answers, because they're there. Every loss reveals something. Every loss removes something. Every loss makes space for something. You just have to be willing to look. I've done this practice with every major loss in my life, every failure, every collapse, every ending, and every single time I found things to be grateful for. Not immediately, not while the pain was fresh, but after some time, after some honesty, I could see what the loss revealed, what it removed, what it made space for. And seeing that changed how I felt about the loss. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave the pain meaning. It turned the loss from pure negative into information, into correction, into clearing, and that made it bearable. More than bearable, valuable. Now let me bring all of this together. Let me show you the complete map through impossible moments one more time. Because if you understand this map, if you really get it, you'll never fear collapse the same way again. You might still hurt, but you won't fear it. Because you'll know what it's doing. You'll know where it's taking you. Stage 1, the collapse. Everything falls apart. What to do? Stop trying to save everything. Write down what's actually collapsing. Ask what each thing is showing you. Don't set up camp here. Move through this stage as quickly as you can. Stage 2, the clarity. What comes after you stop fighting? What to do? Make 2 lists. What collapsed? What remained? See what the collapse revealed about what you were building wrong. See what remained as your real foundation. Protect this clarity. It's the whole point. Stage 3, the climb, where you rebuild based on clarity. What to do? Build something new, not the same thing. Start small. Take single steps. Act despite feelings. Be grateful for what broke. Trust the process. Throughout all 3 stages, remember that feelings are information, not instructions. Remember that the whole thing is impossible, but the next step never is. Remember that what remains is more valuable than what collapsed. Remember that the collapse is happening for you, not to you. This is the map. This is how you move through impossible moments, not around them, through them. And what you build on the other side, what you become in the process, that's better than anything you had before, because it's built on truth, tested by fire, forged in the impossible moment. Now let me tell you what happens if you actually do this, if you actually follow this map through your impossible moment. Let me tell you what changed for me after I learned to move through impossible moments instead of being destroyed by them. I stopped fearing collapse. Not completely. I'm human. Collapse still hurts. Loss still stings. Failure still feels bad. But I don't fear it the way I used to, because I know what it does now. I know it clears the path. I know it reveals the foundation. I know it shows me what I need to see. I know something better is coming if I move through it right. That knowledge changes everything. Before I understood this, collapse felt like the end, like death, like proof that I couldn't do it. After I understood this, collapse felt like information, like course correction, like preparation for what comes next. Same event, different meaning, and the meaning determines whether it destroys you or develops you. I started seeing patterns in my life and other people's lives. Every person who built something significant went through at least one major collapse, usually more than one. The collapse wasn't the exception, it was part of the path. Edison's first inventions failed. Carnegie lost his first business. Rockefeller faced bankruptcy early on. Every single person who built something that lasted went through the fire. The difference between them and people who didn't build anything wasn't that they avoided collapse. They moved through it. They used it. They let it show them what they needed to see. I also noticed something else. The bigger the thing you're building, the bigger the collapse that comes before it. Small dreams face small obstacles. Big dreams face big collapses. If you're building something that matters, something that will change things, something that will last, you're going to face an impossible moment. Maybe more than one. That's not a bug. It's a feature. The impossible moment is testing whether you really want what you say you want, whether you're really committed, whether you're building on truth or on lies. Most people quit when it gets impossible, when the test comes. They prove they were just wishing, not willing. But the people who push through, who stay in the fire long enough to let it refine them, they come out different, stronger, clearer, more certain, and they build things that last. Because they built them on foundations that were tested. This is what I want you to understand. If you're in an impossible moment right now, if life feels like it's collapsing, that's not the end of your story. That's the most important chapter. That's where you become who you need to become to build what you're meant to build. Don't waste it. Don't just try to get through it. Learn from it. Let it show you what it's revealing. Let it clear what needs clearing. Let it test what needs testing. And when you come through it, when you reach the other side, you'll be different. You'll be ready for what comes next in a way you weren't ready before. The impossible moment isn't destroying you. It's preparing you. So let me tell you what to do starting right now, today, tonight, tomorrow. First, if you're in the collapse, stop fighting it. Let what's dying die. You can't save it, and trying just delays the clarity. Write down what's actually falling apart. See it clearly. Second, look for what remained. What's still here after everything else fell? That's your foundation. Everything else was scaffolding. The real structure is what didn't fall. Third, ask what the collapse is revealing. What does it show you about what you were building? About what you believed? About what you prioritized? The collapse is giving you information, painful information, but information you need. Fourth, take one action tomorrow, just one, the next single step. Not the whole path, not the entire rebuild, just the next possible action. Fifth, separate feelings from instructions. When you feel hopeless or afraid or like quitting, ask what information that feeling is giving you. Then ask what the actual instruction is. Almost always the feeling says quit and the instruction says continue. Sixth, be grateful for what broke. Write it down. I'm grateful this revealed. I'm grateful this removed. I'm grateful this made space for. This changes how you see the loss. Seventh, listen to this again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. The principles sink deeper each time. Your mind needs repetition to change old patterns of thinking. And most important, remember this. The impossible moment is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the part that actually matters. Everything before the collapse was preparation. Everything during the collapse is revelation. Everything after the collapse is purpose. You're not broken. You're breaking through. The collapse cleared the path. The clarity shows you where to go. And the climb is how you get there. You have everything you need to start. Not everything you want. Not everything you had before. But everything you actually need. Start with that. Build from that. One step at a time. And I promise you, if you move through this impossible moment the right way, if you let it reveal what it's trying to show you, if you build on what remained instead of grieving what fell, you'll look back on this time differently. Not as the worst time of your life, as the time that changed everything, as the time you became who you needed to be, as the time the real work began. The impossible moment isn't ending your story, it's beginning it. Now take the next step. Start building now. Good luck.